Thank you very much, and certainly thank you to the people that decided to come out tonight. I came back from a 500-kilometer bike ride around Cuba. No, that's not all the way around Cuba, but that's part of Cuba with my son Darren. When I got back, I started to talk to some people about having been to Cuba, and one lady said, "Oh, there's a great book you'll want to read, Anita's Revolution." And she said the author isn't from Victoria. I read the book and I went, wow, the legacy that Fidel Castro had, whether you agree with Fidel Castro or not, the interesting legacy. He said in 1960 at the United Nations, we will eliminate illiteracy in Cuba in 1 year. Now that's a legacy. He did it in 1 year. They recruited they actually put about 700,000 people through the program, but they recruited over 200,000 teachers. About 100,000 of those were under 15. And I got to thinking, that's a legacy. What's my legacy? Not necessarily going to leave any buildings or scholarships, although who knows, you could win the lottery. But I thought, how do you start figuring a legacy? Well, you think about, what can I pick up from my ancestors? What can I pick up from my own family? And think about how I can incorporate those into what I do. Came across a quote from Ralph Waldo Emerson. He said, the greatest gift that you can give is a piece of thine self. I looked at my ancestors. My grandparents, 4 of them, all came from Iceland. Well, the first thing that became pretty obvious is that they knew how to overcome adversity. That's a characteristic I'd like to pass on to my children, my grandchildren. Adversity, well, because they were starving. There was a little volcanic reaction. They blanked out the sun, and the fjords were frozen, and there wasn't any food. Well, if you take off from Iceland about 1885, 90 in there, that is definitely overcoming adversity. But what was the second thing? Taking an adventure. That's an adventure to take off for Canada. Then I looked at my own parents. My mother taught me badminton. Didn't say, oh, go and join the local badminton club. She went and played and taught me badminton. My father taught me gymnastics. He didn't say, go and join the local gymnastics club. He went to the gymnastics club with me. I went, yeah. My father was into personal fitness and health before it was fashionable. He read Bernard McFadden, and this is before Charles Atlas, if anybody can remember that one. And he would get up and walk on his hands. He would walk on his hands across this room and back. My goal was to catch him walking on my hands. I'd like to tell you I did, and I did. Little caveat. I trained hard and practiced and got better, and he got older. And I caught him when he was about 65. I've decided that my legacy is to be a living legacy, to demonstrate by what I do to my children and my grandchildren that they can think about overcoming adversity, taking adventures, and looking after their own personal health. Now, how does that work? My son said, oh, how'd you like to do an Ironman triathlon, Dad? Well, I think that's an adventure, Victor. That's overcoming adversity. Then I wanted to apply some of the principles of picturing the result that you want. I went up to Penticton a year in advance and ran down the main street of Penticton late at night because I knew I'd be finishing late at night. I wanted a clear picture. But I have even a clearer picture after it's over. I said to the photographer, I said, you managed to get 3 finishing photos of me. I was the only person that had 3 finishing photos. He said, Vic, that was easy. At the speed you were going. And he said, if you'll notice, there wasn't anybody else around to photograph. That's 2.4 mile swim, 120 mile bike, and a 26.2 mile marathon. That's health, that's adventure, that's overcoming adversity, and that's what I want to make sure becomes my legacy. Let's go to the adventure part. I came across a very tiny little part in Tim Ferriss's book, which I know you've read, Art, in his first book, The 4-Hour Workweek. And he said, there is a subtle disease that we have to watch out for. It's AADD. Adult Adventure Deficit Disorder. Now, you likely have not heard of it because they don't have their own charity or their own special run for the cure. Adult Adventure Deficit Disorder. When my son said, or not my son, it was my son said, let's bike around Cuba, and I said, sure, let's go. My grandson said, well, let's take a bike ride up to Sioux Potholes, and Art, I think you'd know it, across Leechtown, across the river, across the Sioux River, and then come back in the Logging Road. I said, sure. So there we are, 10 years old, and we're heading out there. But here's the key. In the book, Younger Next Year, the author says you have to develop pictures of the fitness adventure that you want to take. And you plant those, he doesn't say this, but you plant those in the frontal lobe. But he says, think about kedging. The sailboat would come into the harbor in the old days when they didn't have motors, and if there wasn't any wind, they would send a rowboat out and put the anchor in and then pull to that anchor. That's the same thing that you need to do, or you can do, for adventures so you can become a crusader for AADD, to eliminate it. But that's part of my legacy, to pass on the opportunity to eliminate AADD. Starts with the picture in here and then kedge towards it. Now, you are entrusted with the ideas, the concepts of your ancestors. Have you ever thought about what you might like to pass on? Have you ever thought about what is your legacy? Well, how would you go about doing that? Well, the method I like to do is, that's why I put out those pieces of paper there. I'd like you to take those pieces of paper and take the first one, put it in landscape format. It's important to put it in landscape format because when you do mind mapping, you always like to do it in landscape format. So I want you to put right in the center of that page, ancestors. Write the word ancestors. And then put a line out from ancestors. And what's the first thing that comes to mind? In my case, it was adversity, it was adventure. So think of your ancestors and put one word. And then put another line and another word. And go as quickly as you can. Go as quickly as you can. Put a line and a word. A line and a word. A line and a word. As quickly as you can. Mind mapping is one of the best techniques for creating ideas. Tony Buzane actually had copywritten that particular phrase of all things. Now, take to the next page. You got a second page there. So now put parents, and then put a line out and see what are some of the values or ideas or concepts that have been passed on to you from your parents that you would like to pass on to your family, your children, society in general. Just go quickly, very quickly, just one after the other. Now flip over to the third page and put now, me, put now, put N-O-W. What are some of the things that I would like to pass on? Could be coming from your ancestor, your grandparents, or your parents, or things that you've just been coming up with just now? What would you like to be your legacy? Okay, pens down. We'll put the pens back up again and write this formula down. K multiplied by S multiplied by S, or multiplied by A, I should say. K multiplied by S multiplied by A equals success. Okay, K times S times A equals success. K is knowledge. What happens in our society, we build up our knowledge. We may go take another course or read another book. And S is skill. I remember when I was in the life insurance business, we had a new guy in, and he said, "Oh, Vic," he said, "I've really got to build up my knowledge in this life insurance. I really have to learn the manual." I said, "Well, let's just check, see if you've got enough knowledge to go out now. Do you know people die?" He said, "Yes." "Oh, that's good. You got points for that." "Do you know that when they die, they leave debts?" "Yes." I said, "Get out and start selling." I said, "Oh, by the way, the S is, could you tell somebody that?" Or ask the questions. So S is skill. Knowledge times skill times A. Now, what happens in our society is we build up the knowledge, and we may have an 8. And we build up our skill, and we may have a 5. 8 times 5 equals 40. Would you agree on that so far? All those agree? 40. But if you go 40 times action of 0, what does that equal? 0. Now, what happens if you go 8 times 5 times 1, it looks like it equals 40. Well, it really doesn't, because when you take action of 1, you'll fall into an action of 2. So the whole formula is likely going to take you well over 80. Because as you take action, your knowledge increases, your skill increases, and the whole number goes up. So what's the key? What was that again? What was that again? One more time. Action. You know about the legacy. Now it's time to take action. Whether you agree or disagree with Fidel Castro, he made sure that he eliminated illiteracy in Cuba in 1 year. That's my legacy. What's your legacy? That's it.